Battlefield 2042 Season 7 will start next Tuesday on March 19th, and alongside of it we will receive another major update with loads of changes and improvements. So as usual, I will go through all of the important changes with you in this video, and if you want to read through the full notes yourself in addition to this, you can find a link to them in the description below. The update will become available between 9 and 10 AM UTC on Tuesday, and the season and its Battle Pass progression will then start at 12 UTC. But now let's have a look at the changes, starting with the weapons, cause that's a pretty long list. So first of all, there is the visual recall. I've been talking about this in yesterday's video already, where I showed you some gameplay of the new map and its weapons, and I can only say again what I said over there. The recall changes definitely make the weapons feel more natural and give them more weight and impact. For me, it's an improvement over the old system, but you really have to play these changes yourself to get a feel for it, and it might take some time getting used to for some players and weapons. Another big change coming in Season 7 is the rebalance of the headshot multipliers for SMGs, assault rifles and LMGs that is supposed to rebalance the weapon categories and how they perform at different ranges. For SMGs, this means an increase in headshot multiplier from 1.25 to 1.55, which makes them stronger in close quarters combat. In addition, their aim down sight movement speed will be increased for the K30, MP9, P90 and AC9 by 10%, and for the PP2000 and PPX by 5%. The P90, K30, MP9, AC9 and AKS-74U also receive a buff in hipfire accuracy, and the 3 Vault SMGs, AKS, P90 and PP2000 receive extra improvements to their bullet velocity. However, the only SMG that gets a little nerfed with this update is the PP29, cause its bullet speed gets decreased by about 10%. It still benefits from the higher headshot multiplier though, but the rest of the changes are not applied to it since it's already a high performer. Moving on to the assault rifles, here the headshot multiplier is lowered from 2.15 to 1.9, which means they will no longer have a 2 headshot kill range in close quarters combat and instead always need 3 headshots. This will raise the lowest possible time to kill for these weapons, which was previously too low and led to a lot of frustration. But in most cases this will not affect their performance at mid and long range. In addition, the M5A3 will receive some dispersion changes that result in a 10% higher accuracy of the weapon, and the AC42 gets a lot of tweaks as well. Here the dispersion for the first burst will be reduced, but when firing the weapon at maximum RPM, the dispersion will not fully reset anymore between bursts. So you need to fire it slower for the dispersion to fully reset, which in return will also allow you to hit targets with higher accuracy on longer ranges. And the damage curve of the AC42 is tweaked as well, so for standard issue the damage between 50 and 75 meters is reduced, for subsonics the damage between 50 and 75 meters is increased, and for high power ammunition the damage for all ranges above 100 meters is increased as well. And then we have the LMGs, and here the headshot multiplier gets reduced as well from 2 to 1.9. Similar to the assault rifles, this removes the 2 headshot kill range from this weapon category and also slightly increases the time to kill. This change is supposed to drive the LMGs away from close quarters combat and more into mid and long range and suppressive fire where they belong. Plus the 3 Vault weapons M240B, M60E4 and Type 88 receive a reduction in dispersion by about 10%. In addition to this, we will also see several tweaks and changes to other weapons and categories. So the 12M Auto, for example, receives a little nerf to its shortened barrel attachment, which means that when it's equipped, the horizontal pellet dispersion will increase by 25%, reducing effectiveness of the weapon at range. Then there's the G57 that gets a little damage reduction on ranges up to 30 meters. The MP29 receives a reduction of its damage between 30 and 75 meters. The PF51 will have a much higher hipfire accuracy after the update because it gets increased by 30%, but in return the weapon's aim down sights accuracy is lowered by 15%, so it gets pushed a lot more into this close quarters hipfire monster, and that's the same for the M93R. Here the hipfire accuracy is also increased by 30%. And the last weapon changes we will receive with a new update is a revert of the scope glint back to its old values, because starting on Tuesday the glint is removed again from all 4x and 5x optics and instead will start at scopes with magnifications of 6x and higher. This means you can now use the Raven 4x and PSO 5x again without giving away your position, and only the M11 6x and higher will still produce scope glint. Definitely a good change and something I had been very vocal about in my latest feedback videos. Moving on to the vehicle changes now, there will be several improvements made to how infantry and vehicles interact with each other, but also to the vehicles themselves. The goal is to lessen the amount of threats towards ground vehicles in order to give them more room to breathe, while still make sure that infantry is capable of engaging with them. So to achieve this, the time before a vehicle can be hacked will be increased, and also the time before it can be hacked again, from 10 to 12.5 seconds. Additionally, the EMP blast of Casper's drone is completely removed, and the only thing you can do with it now is spot enemies. I'm not quite sure if this change was completely thought through, because now you can also not destroy enemy X6 devices, sentry turrets or spawn beacons from distance anymore, which was always pretty helpful in rush or breakthrough to weaken fortified defenders. However, in addition to this, the amount of C5 that the Assault and Recon class can carry will be reduced from 3 to 2, and only the engineers still have access to 3 C5. Which means as Assault or Recon you won't be able to single-handedly destroy a tank anymore. Anti-tank mines also get a nerf and will now take 2 seconds to be activated after they've been placed, which means they can no longer be used in the same fashion as C5 and simply be thrown directly at a vehicle, but you can still make them go boom by shooting them, so you might take this shortcut if needed. In a future update we will then see several changes coming to the Engineer class to balance the changes to the Assault and Recons, and also to put more emphasis on the Engineer as anti-vehicle class. These will include an increase in rockets for all rocket launchers and a revisiting of Irish's APS and of Crawford's trait, but more about that when the updates are being released. To balance these changes on the vehicle side, however, the cooldown of flares will get increased in update 7.0 from 12 to 14 seconds, which allows for a longer downtime window and to contribute to a healthier air and ground balance. Plus, the range of the main default cannon of the Wildcat is lowered from 700 to 550 meters, which will create another window of opportunity for aircraft, and the 40mm cannon is completely removed from the vehicle in order to fully commit it to ground-to-air combat. In return, its engine power on lower speeds will get increased to allow for better acceleration and more power when climbing uphill. The turret HP is increased as well from 250 to 550, the delay for the turret's recovery is lowered from 10 to 5 seconds, and the duration of the turret recovery is also lowered from 10 to 8 seconds, so it can take more damage now and recovers a lot faster than before. For all ground vehicles with turrets, there is also a change made to the turret's speed and to the catch-up speed when turning the turret, which means you will now have a similar experience in moving the turret when you are in first person compared to when you are in third person. The only vehicle that doesn't get this increase in turret speed is the EMKV-90 Tor. Additionally, the explosion damage of the Chet's anti-vehicle rocket pods is lowered by 15%, but only to ground armored vehicles, which does not affect transport vehicles. The damage air vehicles receive when colliding with certain objects is getting increased, and the damage regular bullets deal to light air vehicles like the Nightbird is also increased. So quite a lot of vehicle and balance changes here, and I'm definitely curious to see how the infantry vehicle interaction will play in the long run. Besides these two main points, weapon and vehicles, we will also see some smaller changes and improvements as part of update 7.0, and these are tweaks to the deploy screen that I had already shown in yesterday's video. So the UI for when you want to spawn at a vehicle was changed, and it's easier to read what kind of vehicle you spawn in at and how many seats are taken, and it's easier to find vehicles now when they are out of bounds by these lines that go across the full screen. And the way you select a vehicle from the deploy screen is changed, and you now need to right-click at the HQ, and this will bring up the vehicle overview. There's also a new XP event coming to the game with Season 7, which is called a Squad Wipe, and this is triggered after successfully killing the last remaining member of an enemy squad. Besides this, the body armor gadget will now add extra protection against buckshot and flechette ammo, but this effect only applies when the projectile hit the torso and not the limbs or the head. The vertical spotting distance of the togs will also be decreased, making it a little bit harder to spot enemies above or below you, and the EOD bot can now kill enemies that are using Crawford's mounted Vulcan. And that was it for today. All important changes you can expect to see as part of update 7.0 in a few days. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like or a comment below and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Until then, thanks for watching, and thanks to my members for the additional support. I'm Catwoman, and you are awesome.